What is love? Everyone's searching for it. Sometimes we think we've found it, and sometimes we think we've lost it. We say that love heals all wounds, but then we also say that love hurts. And the word love is thrown around so loosely in our culture that I often wonder how many of us really understand it. Do we really know what it means to love? Is love even real or just a wishful fantasy? Or could we be confusing something else with love? What if our ideas about love are all wrong? So let's go into this question and see what we can find out. We use the word love very casually in our culture in regard to our favorite food or music and so on. And I wonder if we understand what the word means or if we realize that we might be cheapening it by using it so casually. There are few words that are thrown around so loosely and frivolously as the word love. And I think the word has been so misused and misunderstood, so polluted and corrupted that perhaps we may even need a new word altogether. We might say that love is a deep sense of affection, but when we say I love pizza, or I love this song, or I love arguing with people, I don't think that what we're expressing is that deep sense of affection. What we're really trying to express is that we take pleasure in eating a certain type of food or listening to a certain song and so on. This means that we like something because we experience pleasure while engaging with it. And if we didn't receive any pleasure, it probably wouldn't interest us. So we use this word love in regard to these pleasurable experiences, and then we turn around and we use the same word in regard to family and friends, to lovers and even strangers. But are we expressing the same sentiment? Now, most would argue that we're not. Most would say that in regard to other people, the word has a very different meaning than how we use it to describe our attachment to sensual gratifications. But I would encourage you to question this. When we say that we love someone, are we really expressing some deep affection, or are we still expressing that we take pleasure in that person? We say that we love our boyfriend or girlfriend, husband or wife, mother or father or child, but how much of that sentiment is based upon some sense of pleasure or security or what have you? If that person did not offer us any pleasure or security at all, would we still love them? Can we love someone who has absolutely nothing at all to offer us? And can we love someone even if they treat us poorly? I think often this is the real test of love, because we say that love is unconditional. But if I love you because you offer me some sense of pleasure or security, then this is a condition. And really, it's the condition that I like. I say that I like you, but that's only because you provide that condition. And if those conditions are removed and I find that I no longer love you, then did I truly love you to begin with? Or was I merely dependent upon you to provide me with some sense of pleasure or security? So I think first of all, we have to make this distinction between love and pleasure. I think we have to question the authenticity of love whenever there is any kind of dependency involved. I think that in order to understand love, we need to examine the way in which we use the word. We need to examine all the feelings which we associate with this word and question whether some of them may be something altogether different. Is love pleasure? Is love possession? Is love something we acquire from others? Or is it something intrinsic to our very nature? Is love something which can be gained and lost? Is it something that fades over time? Can love transform into hatred? Can love hurt? And are the feelings that we often label as love truly love? Or are we mistaken? If love is not merely the enjoyment of pleasure that we receive from sense gratification and social interactions, then what is it exactly? How and from where does it arise? Now, personally, I believe that love is something so expansive that any attempt to define it merely places limitations upon it, and therefore any definition would be inadequate. For instance, Merriam-Webster tries to define love as a strong feeling of constant affection. But that doesn't really say much. And then it goes on to suggest that love is attraction based on sexual desire, which pretty much narrows it down to a basic biological function. But that doesn't explain the kind of love we display towards our family and friends, or even the kind of love we might display toward a total stranger. And we can certainly experience a feeling of strong affection for someone, and that affection can be based on sexual desire, but love transcends all of that. When we have this strong affection, whether it's based on sexual desire or based on the agony of feeling lonely or incomplete, we tend to see the other person as a means to relieve our suffering. Whatever relationship we have with them, it's primarily about taking pleasure in the other person. Maybe you do something nice for your partner now and then, but how much of this is done out of a sincere inspiration to give, and how much is done with the expectation of receiving something in return? So we've gotten this idea that it's the duty of our partner to serve us in some way, whether that's through satisfying our physical needs and desires, or in making us feel whole and happy. But is that really what love is all about? Is it really someone else's responsibility to make us feel happy? Isn't love about giving rather than trying to get something? When we talk about love, are we really talking about love? Or are we using this word to describe attachment, infatuation, lust, and gratification? We should look very closely at this. We should see if there's any distinction. We mistake these surface emotions for love because in the beginning, they seem to mimic love, not only in how they feel, but also in the way that we behave under their initial influence. When we're in love, we tend to become more attentive, more affectionate, generous, considerate, empathetic, and tolerant. And these seem to be the very attributes of love. But as the feeling subsides, our behavior can often shift, becoming neglectful, indifferent, impatient, irritable, and even spiteful. We can begin to loathe the very person who we once thought we were so in love with. But is love something that fades and dies or turns into hatred? Or have we confused something else for love? What is the real motive behind these thoughts and behaviors? The greatest distinction between these base emotions and authentic love is intention. The intention behind these emotions is to gain something, to take pleasure. But there is no ulterior motive behind love. Love is the motive. When we're genuinely motivated by love, there's no expectation of reciprocation, reward, or any outcome whatsoever. Love is its own reward. Genuine love doesn't seek anything but to give of itself. It isn't something to get, but we're so conditioned to see everything as a compromise that we might even be suspicious of someone who gives freely from a place of genuine love. We wonder, why are they behaving so compassionately, so generously, even with complete strangers? And so we think they must be up to something. What's the game? What's the trick? Because we've mistaken these base emotions for love. And so it's difficult to distinguish whether someone is being kind for the sake of kindness or whether they're trying to get something. We may even go so far as to think that love has a price, and we can buy it with kindness, with gifts, with gratifications. But when we do anything for anyone expecting anything in return, what we're doing is business, not love, not kindness. And we have this idea that love is something scarce, like a material resource. So we try to acquire it from others. And when we think we've found it, we try to grasp onto it, to guard it, to possess it. And often what happens is that we wind up losing it. But that's only because we never really acquired it in the first place. What we got from the other person might have been affection, it might have been servitude, it might have been sensual pleasure, but love isn't something you can acquire from someone the way you would acquire a material commodity. We all feel a deep intrinsic yearning for love, and we all feel a sense of incompleteness without it, but most of us are searching for it outwardly when we should be looking within. And oftentimes we go and search for someone to love us. And what we find is someone who is also looking to be loved. But if neither of us has any genuine love to give, then how will either of us acquire it from one another? We're like two hungry beggars begging each other for a gourmet meal. This reminds me of a story about a beggar who sat each and every day upon an old wooden box, collecting change from those passing by. And it was never enough money to be of any great significance, but it was all he could do just to survive. There was one passerby, however, who was particularly friendly, and rather than simply dropping a coin into the cup and hurrying along, this person would always stop for a moment to say hello and ask how the beggar was doing. And one day he said to the beggar, "You know, I've always wondered, what's in the box?" "What box?" the beggar asked. "The box that you're always sitting on," said the passerby. "Oh, this old thing? It's just an old box. There's nothing in it." "Well," said the passerby, "have you ever looked?" "Look, I told you," the beggar replied. "There's no point in looking. There's nothing in there." But after some convincing, the passerby persuaded the beggar to take a look. The beggar took out his pocket knife and pried at the seams, and once he was able to pull the top off just a little, he stopped and stared in wonder. "What is it?" asked the passerby. "See for yourself," said the beggar, tearing the lid completely back, revealing a stash of countless $100 bills. So if you've come across this video on your own personal search for love, I would simply ask you this: what's in your heart? Because maybe that thing that you've been looking for all your life has been right here all along. If you find this content valuable, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.